The mic was on the whole time. It's okay, it was muted, but. Oh, you know why? It was because I was. Is that one? I don't know how to do it. Okay.
Where do I get my energy from? Many times we might try to get our energy from the outside world. Through the food we put in the body, or through social media, and especially through other people. But in fact, these sources don't give me energy. It's an illusion. My energy reduces, and then I try to seek out more. A physical source of energy can never fill me because I am a spiritual being, a soul. My energy cannot come from out there. It comes from first going inward, moving into the awareness that I am a spiritual being made of spiritual energy, which is experienced as peace, lightness, love, truth, bliss. Even thinking about it sincerely starts to change my energy. I can see my mind slowing down. And my mind opening to a different source of energy from beyond, an eternal source of spiritual energy, the source, the supreme soul, God.
Om Shanti, good evening. Welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. We've taken a long pause. As you can see, we're in a new space. Tonight's session is spiritual introversion. And so perhaps I'll just start with, what does introversion mean in the context of Raja Yoga? I've heard some terms out there. Apparently, there's also a different term in psychology. What does introversion mean in Raja Yoga?
Om Shanti. I kind of like the Hindi term antarmukhi, to turn the face inwards. So we spend so much time looking outside. So this is an idea of turning our face inwards to spend more time looking at the self. So there's two reasons I might do that. One, which I've always enjoyed, this concept of introversion versus extroversion, is where I'm going to get my energy from. So understanding that trying to get it from outside is a mismatch with who I am. The physical can never really give the spiritual energy. But the other reason is to realize that actually it is the state of the self that is extremely important to pay attention to in terms of the objectives of quality of life. It's not the state of things out there. So two things have to be realized in the soul. Where can I actually get energy from? And what actually is the basis of quality of life? And that if I figure that out, then I'll be inspired to turn my face or to look inwards.
I wasn't expecting this question, but because you were giving a definition, apparently in psychology, their definition of introversion is where you get your energy from. There's another perception I've heard out there, but regardless, I often hear that being an introvert actually has some negative connotations. Could you share a bit more about that before we go into spiritual introversion?
It's interesting, the ideas that we have, and we're not here to dispute or debate, but just propose some of the thoughts. And definitely someone might think of someone who's shy or withdrawn as introverted. And it's quite interesting how many performers and entertainers are actually introverts. I think that surprises us because they're out there, the whole world is looking at them, they're outwardly expressive. There's one in particular who is a beautiful performer, but when you actually meet them off stage, they're very quiet and completely different from what's presented on stage. And that when I was doing track and field, again, very explosive, very much about outward expression of energy. I got my energy from going inside into stillness. So introverts actually have more energy for outward expression. And so it's really flying in the face of some of the ideas that we have. It is where I'm getting my energy from. And especially when we throw the word spiritual, we get even more. Is this that someone who's spiritually introverted is literally in a cave? They're a hermit. They want nothing to do with day-to-day life or interaction. And of course, we get to meet souls that are quite the contrary. I think Daddy Janki, one of our past senior administrators, was a really good example. She was coming into sound quite a bit, but she had a very powerful connection with silence. She was fed by silence, fed by a connection to God in silence, even while speaking and interacting. So really looking at these concepts we have.
Perhaps you could share a bit more about in terms of getting my resources from the inside. Where is my source of energy? Because even on a day-to-day basis, even you use the word human being, that's actually kind of a common thing. People say, I just want to be. But for someone who doesn't have any experience in spirituality, what does that mean, getting my source of energy from a spiritual place? Assuming there's some online who haven't actually taken the course.
I was listening to a conversation just before this conversation, and I really liked one aspect that was brought up. And this was a senior yogi sharing about being very sincere and authentic with themselves. And that's, to me, very connected to being. It takes tremendous energy to keep sustaining an image and being so concerned about what other people think and how I'm presenting and this image maintenance. And it's actually such a liberation, such a relief to be okay with putting aside this concern with the image and actually getting to know the self as a human being, as a being. So that alone is a shift in energy. It's just getting to know the self in a different way. And that's really what Raj Yoga or any robust spiritual practice would explore, is less and less about trying to understand this and trying to fulfill some sort of customs and systems out there, and more about being to letting that go and introducing the self to the self. And I've always liked this line out of the Gita, I believe, which is basically paraphrasing, in silence, the self is revealed to the self. That is incredibly refreshing. And just to have liberation, to be free, to genuinely be with the self is so energizing.
It's interesting you're sharing about that, because I was remembering one of the very senior students. She had recently transitioned at Evertan Mohini. She was sharing about soul consciousness, being inside and actually feeling the experience of being a soul. Can you share about that? Because for some, like, well, what is that supposed to feel like? How can you feel something so subtle?
Whenever I hear the word subtle, I sometimes wonder in our head, just because we're so used to doing this, that it's inaccessible, esoteric, even intellectual. It's actually very simple. These experiences are extremely simple, far less complicated than some of the other things we've been trying to understand. The only reason we use subtle is that it's not physical. That's the only reason. So otherwise we set up mental barriers before we even begin. Oh, it's subtle. There's no way. I hear this with meditation. Souls say, I can't meditate. I'm too caught up in other stuff. So it is going to ask us to go into a realm which is non-physical, but it's actually less complicated than where our heads have been. I'm always, when I'm sitting in reflection and then I have to come into sort of physical activity, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so complicated. Let me go back inside. So that's kind of the first thing. Yes, we are subtle and that we're not physical, cannot be seen with the physical eyes. But it's actually very to remove any mental barriers that might be there. So even as we're sitting here now, myself, doing things, thinking, reflecting, making choices, that's me operating. And already I don't feel the body has anything to do with any of those activities. So that's getting closer to an experience of myself.
It's interesting as well when you mention about it, because for so long we've been seeking sources of peace in the mountains, in this situation, that situation. And often maybe souls aren't able to articulate, but but these are all of my inputs to be able to experience. Is there an experience of me as a quality? Seems, as you mentioned, can be quite abstract or esoteric for souls.
You know, that sometimes comes up as difficult, that this is difficult. And again, we're creating a mental barrier that may not have to be there. It isn't so much that it's difficult as that it's different. It's different from what we've been doing, and we've gotten very habituated in looking to physical sources for a spiritual experience. When you say it out loud, of course, it makes no sense. But yet we've developed quite a habit of, going to nature or to even physically. I can only meditate when I'm in a quiet room with certain music, certain lighting. Everyone, either I'm alone or everyone else is behaving themselves. Like there has to be certain conditions. And then more and more, you begin to realize, actually, I could be in a rock concert and having a very good connection with myself as a peaceful being. It's not that when I don't think of myself as a soul that I stop being one. It's not that I'm trying to create myself as a soul. I'm always a soul when I think about it. An example that we often use in the Course is, we can do it right now, but be careful. I'm not there to gauge that you're not doing damage to yourself. But take 2 fingers and gently place them on the side. This is a classic place, a big artery, where we can maybe feel the heartbeat, the pulse. I hope you find something. So suddenly I touched the presence of blood pumping, heart working. But I'm pretty certain before that moment you weren't thinking about it at all. Does that mean it wasn't working? The heart wasn't working? The blood was... No, it's always doing it. I'm just not aware of it. So what we're doing in meditation, if you wish to call it that, is I'm becoming aware of who I am and have always been. And even when you were doing this, I suspect you became very quiet, very internally focused, because we're touching something more subtle, if you will. And so it requires this interesting focusing of attention. So I become aware of what's already there. So making it simple, so I can remove any mental barriers.
Is it possible that because our minds are so noisy, that's, until we continue to practice, it's different, that's what all that souls are feeling. So it's like there's nothing else they can feel underneath that. So they go to nature, places where the atmosphere is different, the situation is different. It feels like it's overriding whatever the noise is going on inside.
Definitely, I think a very compassionate approach to all of this is important. And that's why when taking the Course, especially at the beginning, there's certain images that we bring in. So to build bridges towards something that has become very different for us. So we might have pictures that we show, or commentaries that are spoken, or a beautiful atmosphere, spiritual atmosphere. So these are really nice bridges, just like in a fitness studio. If someone has some mechanics issue, we usually start by putting them in a zero gravity scenario, such as lying down, so that they can reestablish or build a bridge to the proper mechanics, or in water is another way. So similarly, spiritually, I have the habit of connecting to physical. So we build some bridges, we create a good support, and eventually you'll begin to notice that those supports are no longer needed. You don't need soft music. You don't need a picture in front of you. You don't need a certain atmosphere. You don't need a commentary. But at first, definitely, a very compassionate approach to this. Have some supports.
Is there a relationship with inner understanding yourself, and being able to have introversion? to have to experience yourself.
Definitely. Physically, that's the case, and spiritually, it's the case. So, if in a fitness class, if you're trying to get souls to an experience, really precise instructors will be cueing nonstop. They're just giving a flow of information. This is what you'll feel. This is what you're trying to do. So there's a flow. We call it edutainment. You're doing it in a way that's light, but there's a lot of education. The same thing's happening spiritually. We need spiritual knowledge, which we now understand as reminders. Again, we're not trying to create something that's not there. We're trying to connect with something that's always been there, but we've become almost amnesiac about. So lots of, yes, spiritual knowledge, reminders that help us to wake up or become aware of what's always been there. Very important to expose with spiritual knowledge. And then during the day, if possible, we continue to reflect on that spiritual knowledge. And that's actually how we define meditation, is how you talk to yourself. Is the inner dialogue now filled with spiritual knowledge, or is it still about what's going on around me? And it's a form of introversion as well.
We'll squeeze in one last question. This phrase that we use in Raja Yoga, detached observer. And well, that in itself is a loaded term, detachment. But what is the connection between introversion? If we want to use detached observer, you might have to give a moment to even define what that means. Just because it seems like there's so much that needs to be felt inside, experienced inside, and often we think of detachment as disconnect, reject, and that's not what Raja Yoga is about.
I was thinking about this the other day because one of our members is a judge, and so I was thinking about the stage that she needs to have to play that role, and she needs to be a detached observer. We also assume in a courtroom that the ones that we call witnesses, we assume they're detached observers. Turns out they're not, but that's the best case scenario. So witness is a lovely word, actually, for detached observer. The reason we assume that is we assume that they're viewing, that we say, okay, what age were they? What culture were they? Give us some details. We're assuming that they were completely clear and objective and not mixing in any of their own stuff, so that they can give a true testimony as to what they actually saw. It turns out that you can put two witnesses, so-called eyewitnesses, on the stand who have viewed the same incident, and they will give two very different reports. Think about yourself. I've been in so many situations where I was in a situation and my friend was in the same situation. We're sharing this event with a third person, and then I listen to the situation. I don't even recognize. We're talking about the same event, but completely different, because they looked at it not as a detached observer or clearly as a witness free of judgment. They looked at it mixing in their own commentary, their own biases, their own experiences, their own filters. So a detached observer is extremely important. Restoration or healing, or to have clarity, especially about myself. And it's very, I think people connect it to uncaring. And I actually think of it as in the exact opposite way. The intention is to benefit, even with a witness. The intention is to bring out the truth, to benefit. So to see it as being a witness in order to understand the truth and not be deceived by what's on the surface to really see what's going on.
Introversion seems to be a really important topic, but we have run out of time. So perhaps we'll have a little reflection.
I sit here with my physical eyes open, just as I do through the day. But there's a difference in this moment. My eye of insight is also open. The eye that can see very clearly what is not physical, but is still very real. And the first thing I seek to see is myself, feeling my mind, my inner world become very beautifully quiet, so that slowly, patiently, an experience of myself emerges. The clear recognition that I am separate from this body, that this body belongs more to the physical chair it sits in than it does to me. I am quiet, I am light, simple in form, not physical, a spark of life. And within me is that most precious resource of peace. Taking time as frequently as possible to bring the sense of self into focus through my eye of insight, turning my vision inward. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, thank you for joining with us this evening and for your patience. And so just a warm reminder that we do have our next Learn About Meditation session at the Academy on Saturday, June 28th, 12:15 to 1:30. We also have evening meditation sessions happening at the Academy as well. I believe they're 30 minutes long, 6:30 to 7 o'clock. And so again, for both sessions, it's nice to register, but again, you don't have to, but you do need to let the front desk know that you're actually there so they can tell you where to go. And also a warm reminder for the Inner Freedom program that will be happening on Friday, August 22nd, if you have not registered so that you can be informed about tickets, or if you want to be part of this personal development journey about this beautiful topic of inner freedom, healing the heart through forgiveness, which is the sub-theme for Calgary, please do register online. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the center. Lots of other drop-in sessions online, and as well, there are details of those on site too. So thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.